Greetings, Earthlings, amazing souls on this human journey. I hope you all are doing well. Should I adjust this lighting just a minute here? Okay, a little better. These big windows get a lot of glare. So I felt compelled. And I think I felt compelled. My soul was like, dude, you gotta do something. You're hiding. And I was reading the book by Seth Godin called The Practice, and I think I was on number 40, 48 or 49. The way he has the book is numerically ordered, so it makes it easy to follow. And there was one in there about hiding, and I am certainly guilty of that. Although I've shared a lot of my work in the past, for the past 8 years, I think with the recent course of events, I may have withdrawn a bit, which is good. You know, I've spent this time to focus on healing my inner child and growing my self-worth, and that meant detaching from a lot of things. And it was, I think, one of the most valuable decisions that I made was to do that, because for 8 years prior, or 6 years prior, I saw how low my self-worth was, and all of my decisions and relationships reflected that too, because they're all mirrors for us and where we're at on our journey. I think I'm supposed to look into the camera. So I felt compelled to share a little bit about, I guess this would be Processing Grief Part 2. If I look up or down, I don't know. It'd be weird if I'm just like, I guess that's the camera, because it's front facing. It's amazing I could do cinematic, but I'm just yammering here. Anyways, I'll just look straight at myself as I'm talking directly to you guys. I thought I would do a second video regarding processing grief. It's been about 3 weeks. Wednesday it'll be 3 weeks since my father's passing. And I was sitting with my mom today. We had dinner or lunch, and she was feeling emotions, I was feeling emotions. And she also said that, you know, I can't believe it's real. Like, it's not necessarily a denial stage, because we know that it's happened. He's moved on from the physical plane to the spirit realm, and has had the death experience. But it's strange, I will admit. I've even, you know, the weeks leading up to the days leading up to where I am now, it's been interesting. You know, emotions they'd come in waves. And I know that this process takes time, but it is bizarre. This is the first time I've experienced, you know, I've had friends of mine who have passed, but nobody as close as a family member, especially one whom I was very close to. And to see them just a few weeks prior to going into the hospital, out, you know, doing the yard or sitting in his favorite chair watching TV, and then to have that be changed forever. And we're in this process of planning his celebration of life. And my mother, you know, fortunately she has all of this experience in her previous career before she retired, with being extremely organized and doing copious amounts of paperwork. And those are one of the skill sets that are not my strong suits, but I'm able to see how it really benefits her, especially with contacting all of the organizations and pension people, creditors, and all this stuff, and seeing how her process for this, and also making her aware in a gentle way to take care of herself, because I see we all are conditioned with certain levels of fear. And given this will be another video, my ancestry on my mother's side and what they had endured to get here to America was very traumatic. My mother was born in a refugee camp, and so the sense of stability was constantly being pulled out from underneath them, going from Russia to Shanghai and then to the Philippines. That's a whole other story. But they were known as the White Russians. And so where I was going with that, the conditioning of fear. So given that I've spent the past 10 years working on myself, and the past 2 years really understanding where my limiting beliefs are, where the fear and all these things are projected onto us, and really paying attention and asking questions to get clarity on this stuff, being able to talk to my parents about this has been very helpful. Sorry if this is bouncing around a bit. Any movements on the table, I'm trying to stay still. I'll just put my hands on my lap, my legs. Yeah, because I know that there's, I remember I think it was Anthony Robbins said, the level of uncertainty that you can comfortably live with correlates to the level of happiness that you experience in life. And I've gone through a fair amount of that myself. I've had quite a adventurous, I guess that would be a euphemism for there were very traumatic experiences in my own life. But they've been opportunities to hone my faith. And I'm not talking faith necessarily in a monotheistic sense or organized structured religion, but faith within the universe and within myself. So I've been able to be a presence for my mother to help encourage her to, I guess, embrace the unknown, and to be able to sit in the discomfort and to trust. I hear so many people who, maybe subscribe to an organized faith, whether it be Christianity, Catholicism, Buddhism, whatever it may be. And they proclaim that they have faith, but when they're put in the face of adversity or challenging situations, you can see the behavior and the energy. Energy is the first thing to introduce somebody. I can feel it, and I'm being more aware of that anxious sort of erratic energy, and it's something that I didn't really pick up on, or I picked up on it, but I didn't really acknowledge it. I figured that this is something that's just natural. For some it is. For me it probably was too, but doing the self-work has, and I'm talking probably 8 years of meditation, I'm able to access a level of peace within myself pretty much at any moment. Granted, it's not a meditation perfect, or it's not something that I falter at times, but seeing those emotions and the uncertainties and the fears rise up in her, and if I'm around time, I'm able to acknowledge and bring awareness to her in a gentle way, because there's a level of control too that we all, I think, desire, and especially when we see loved ones possibly engaging in behaviors or mind states that could be disruptive and lead to a lot of stress. I think the Buddhists call it a koan. I don't use a koan, but I do bring attention in a loving way, because I think that's important, and I do preface that, I'm not trying to control you. I just, this is what I'm observing, and it's up to the individual. That's empowerment. It's up to the individual to make the changes for themselves, and leading by example is really the best way. But if it's unhealthy, that's really important to say something. So yeah, I've been processing this grief and the loss of my father, and it's not something that you just sit down and you work through all of it and then it's done. I don't think it ever goes away. Especially when you lived so close to them. Like I was fortunate to live with my parents for the past few years and get to know them on a much deeper level, and got to spend a lot of time with them. And I struggled with that too, being at home with my parents, and being a business owner, I should be at this stage in my career, yada yada. But had it not have been for the events that led me back here, I don't think I would have the closure that I do now, because I got to come back. It's almost like a child. Well, I am their child, even though I'm an adult, grown man. I've been able to spend a lot of time with them, get to know them, and I work through my own challenges with that as well. But I feel it was a huge blessing, all the things that didn't work out prior that led me back here. So it's in this, especially now where we're getting ready, we have probably, what's the 7th, just under 2 weeks before the event. This is my dad's celebration of life, and I chose to take on the responsibility of creating a playlist for music that he liked, and creating like a slideshow that people could see. We've got, I think, 65, 70 people, which is, I mean, there's a lot of people that we know, but it'll be good. It's interesting. It's like, when they say weddings and funerals, when you see people you haven't seen in a long time. Yeah. It'll be good to see faces, smiling faces, people whom I've known for many, many years and lost touch with. Just life happens. But processing the grief, I think I said in my last video, it is unique to each one of us. And I remember I might have talked about this in the past video about people's reaction to my dad's passing, and some of them were extremely emotional, and I was comparing myself, thinking, how come I'm not reacting like that? And my mother felt the same way, because we had some neighbors that were very emotional. And what I learned too is that everybody processes things differently, and how we see the world, it comes through our eyes, our filter, our heart. So wherever we're at inside ourselves, whether it be from a healed place or an unhealed place, or we have our own traumas and experienced losses that we're very emotional, then those may be triggers for certain individuals. I still get triggered. I think nobody is free of triggers. They just lessen in their intensity. And that's an indicator that, you've had a lot of healing. Healing the inner child and reprogramming, and I'm a big fan of all of that. I think that it's the most important thing that we can do to show up in a more loving and compassionate way in every relationship. And then you get clarity on what's important in your life, and I think it's all so valuable. And then you find out, the things that no longer serve you, and you're able to let go of the things that don't, and embrace a new you. And it takes time. But I found one of the reasons why I brought up Seth Godin's book, The Practice, because I've certainly been dancing around this. I told myself, okay, spend 10 minutes a day just working on your speech. That's another thing. I'm going to be doing a speech, and I want it to be something that's really impactful, kind of like what I'm sharing today, because I want people to understand like how important this life is. And we take a lot of things for granted, um, or we can. I think when the more work you do, the more presence you cultivate, gratitude is, I think, at the forefront of my day. Throughout the day, I'm constantly thanking the smallest of things for abundance, for being in my life, for making my life more easy and enjoyable. And it's really the smallest of things. And down to the water that I make from my ice cubes. It's those little things, you know. And when somebody passes, it puts into perspective a lot. So back to the book. I read it. I started out talking about, I think it was 47, 48, or 49, one of those in the book. And he talked about hiding. And that one resonated for me on multiple levels because I've kind of gone into a state of hiding. And I'm going to sit up for just a second. Okay. My butt. If for those of you who are familiar with human design, I'm a projector 6'2", so hiding. I don't follow all this stuff to a T. I think some of it is limiting in its capacity, and we are really infinite, and we possess infinite abilities and powers and strengths, and we are light and love. So anything that kind of puts you in a box, I think I don't fully subscribe to. But there are aspects of it that are really interesting, like the 6'2". For me is, and Barack Obama shares the same birthday as me, and he's a 6'2". So that's really inspiring because I think he's a pretty neat guy. And that may turn a few of you off, and that's fine. Because this is about me sharing. But part of the two, the hermit, is when we go inwards, you know, when we take the time in solitude with ourselves to understand, to know thyself better. And I think that's been a crucial part. So prior to that, I was very energetic and, I don't know, maybe aggressive about my sharing and getting everything out there. And I realized too that it was coming from a need of validation and externally. But I confronted those fears many times over and over again. But as I've taken this time away, about the past year and a half, it's made me, I'm moving from a different place, and it feels good. But there's the part of me, because of the way the culture is so strong, and it supports more of the manifestors and manifesting generator type, that there's this kind of energetic drive to do more, to achieve more, to be more. And then, you know, you see people with, you know, all these material possessions and this luxurious life, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. I think that's, I mean, I would love to experience that as well, for myself, and what that looks like, which is unique to me. But I think, I mean, I create luxury goods, and I create, you know, really high-end products. So it's something, in my client base too. But I've had to work through the limiting beliefs and the blocks. And so what I'm getting at is the hiding part. There's definitely an element there that I've experienced recently, because it's also making space for my time to process all of this, you know. Giving myself permission to feel joy, and it's something I actually am challenged with at the moment. Wanting to get my work out there, because there's certain things with my business that I'm working on. Designing a new website. I've got a bunch of new beautiful products that I've created, designs. I'm waiting for photographs to come back so that I can upload those and do another photo shoot as well. So there's certain things that kind of need to follow a timeline, for me, because it feels good. Instead of just like throwing everything out there, I want to be able to funnel it, and so that people can go to the website and purchase things and such. So, but when he talked about the hiding part, Seth, it's definitely a means to bypass because it's playing it safe. Um, and for me, perfectionism has played a huge role in the resistance that I've faced in putting my work out there, or also to having the idea taken. And that is a limiting belief, full-on limiting belief. And it's also conditioned too. You spend some time around people and you pay attention, you listen, and you observe, then you can pick up and see where these things come from. So it's really interesting for me to have that perspective now and to work towards healing it. And my ears ringing, left side. So yeah, there's still healing work to do. But also too, it's like in Joe Dispenza's work, he talks about, letting go of the old story. And Bruce Lipton too, in the reprogramming part. So it's our thoughts, our attention, what are we placing our thoughts and our attention on? And that is where the energy goes, and it's either towards building the new or fighting the old. So yeah, but I thought I would share a little bit about, I don't know if this made any sense. Kind of does to me. I think through talking it out and sharing, it helps, one, for me to process, two, like looking at myself in front of the camera, this is challenging to some degree. I think the Leo part of me does enjoy some of the limelight. But processing grief, in the past 2 weeks, I've experienced a lot of different emotions. I was fortunate to speak with a very dear friend of mine. She's one of my spirit guides, Lisa. And she brought a lot of clarity and confirmation to what I was experiencing, because she pulled some cards for me. And when she pulled the cards, it totally resonated. And my optimism through it, I foresaw him coming out of this, and then me seeing him healing, and us building a relationship together. And I think the ego part of me that wanted to believe so desperately that this was going to happen, that's something that I had to acknowledge within myself, but also too that the forces that be, the universe, my dad choosing whether to move beyond the physical plane, which he did, is also a choice too. And he fought it for a long time, and that's the part that's hurtful too, I think, is I have my views on Western medicine, and God knows I've had my personal experiences in that. Those are other videos, but seeing him in there for 2 months, just trapped in his body. There's so many hoses and poking and prodding, and he was unresponsive. And it kind of reminds me of that Metallica song in a way, One. And he wasn't completely unresponsive, but just a few weeks prior, he was, just here. And then it was like the smallest of things, like blinking of the eyes, some movement in the body. And I was like the eternal optimist through this. And I think that it's an essential, I thought maybe I was bypassing or in denial. And the more I think about it, and even speaking with Lisa too, it was an important part for me to be there in this loving, optimistic way for my family, to keep them together, Because if I had chose the other route or succumbed to the fear and the worry, it would have changed the entire experience for everybody and could have amplified all of that. So I felt, and that's always been me, I've always, not always, but I choose the route of optimism a lot of the time, and do believe in one, that we are capable of healing ourselves, and that we are capable of so many amazing things, and that there's a benevolent force that guides each one of us. So that was something that I come to terms with too, because the feelings of guilt, like I could have done more, I should have been there more, because I would go in at night. During the daytime, it was a bit much for me. I'm already sensitive to begin with, so being around all of the busyness and the people coming in and out, the doctors and nurses and checking in on him, my mom endured it, but I would go in at nighttime and would sit with him, and sometimes I would just sit there and observe and just send loving energy, or sometimes I'd hold his hand, rub his forehead, something. Sometimes there was like physical interaction, touch, and sometimes it was just observing, because I wanted him to rest. And I did what I could. What I felt on my part was important, and that was going in on an energetic level to help him, to help facilitate healing in some way, to help forgive, to let go. And I believe that it had some impact, but I was taking on a lot of it like this was my fault. I could have and should have done more. And I felt that come up again, and it's, at least this time I was able to acknowledge it and know that, because I also tried to encourage, my family to acknowledge that my father is powerful, a powerful human being, and has the potential to heal himself too. And that is a choice that I believe we all have. Maybe some circumstances are a bit different, and everybody's circumstance is different, but I just believe that we are incredibly powerful beings. And so I had to come to terms with that, and I shared that with Lisa, and she confirmed, and that felt really good to know that I did what I could, the best that I could. And it's a choice when we make that choice to move on, to have our death experience. And so there was all these things that would come up, little moments when I'd hear songs, or again walk by his room, or just think about him. And today, because we were looking at pictures, and I happened to be talking to my mom, and the song that came on that was their song, happened to play on her. She had her little speaker playing jazz station on Pandora, and that particular song, I don't know the name, but it started playing as we were talking, and I was emotional for her and for me too. And I'm grateful that I could be here for my mom through this and pay that forward to, it's like, I guess, a rite of passage too, and to be able to support and help my parents, and my mother and my father, for all that they did for me as a kid and growing up too. So yeah, a lot of things come up, and there's also some of the things that, anger, I think not necessarily directed towards, I think some of it is probably towards Western medicine and the doctors, and not that they were doing their best. And again, I don't know like fully all the stuff that was happening inside my dad's body, and for how long, and all of this, but I know it was a lot. There was a lot of trauma, from as a Vietnam veteran, and then trauma he experienced as a kid, and not having that stuff healed, or not choosing to go there. It just builds and builds and builds, and then that affects the organs and the systems and the cells in the body, and it gets to a point where it could be too late. And so that, on top of where he was at physically, he needed that care, that level of care. But I've had to work through that too, because we were blessed to really have so many amazing nurses and doctors that were by his side, tending to him, and I was so grateful and appreciative. But because of the way the system is structured, they have, their protocols with stuff, and I know that we are so much more than those medications and the drugs, and it's treating surface level stuff. Because I know I had a lot of health conditions as a kid and growing up, and I healed myself from all of them. Epilepsy and severe depression and anxiety, chronic asthma and allergies, which I don't have any anymore. So yeah, I believe in the power of the mind, and the power of our spirit and ourselves to heal. But yeah, so I thought I would do a share, half hour. I'll probably do another update a few weeks, but I think partly why I've been bypassing. So I mean, it's interesting because you can bypass one way or the other. I can really delve into the work, which I feel like after my father passed, that's really, it's ignited a fire inside of me. It made me very aware of time. Not necessarily a focus on it, but to, like, I have things to share. Like, part of one of my soul missions is immortality, and by that it's leaving a legacy, and I'm writing a book, getting my work out there, my new creations, and pulling my spirituality and my wisdom into these new designs, and I think that really gives them incredible value. So where was I going with that? Yeah, I lost my train of thought. So it's been interesting, and bypassing, and bypassing one way would be, delving deep into the work and kind of not creating a space to feel what I need to feel, but it is a balance. I try to allow myself space to feel some of the things, but also to honor. And I know that my father is supporting me now in the spirit realm, to really get my work out there, because there were many dreams, I believe, that he had as an artist that he wanted to share, but that wasn't back then, and he didn't have the support in his family, and so there was all kinds of things that built resentment and things like that. But I feel that for me, it's kind of a role that I've stepped into, and I'm talking now that I learned about my ancestors. It's a big responsibility, but I'm owning it to share what I know, my wisdom and my experiences, and to help elevate the collective, because I think that's what's we're all here for in some way, shape, or form, is to help each other and connection. So it's just kind of a funky balance of giving myself permission to have joy, but also experiencing what I need to experience, and it's not perfect. I don't know how to go about doing it, but there's probably a tinge of worth in there, self-worth, because there's a lot of things that I do want to share, these amazing creations, but given what has happened with my father passing, there's this other layer to it, and I'm sure that it will lessen. Me stepping on to YouTube, making a video, is part of that leaning into and expressing what I'm going through, stepping into this discomfort and sharing. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. Oh, and another thing was, sometimes we can feel resistance in doing things because we're focused on what the outcome is. And for me, it's like being results oriented versus effort focused. And by releasing it to the universe and letting go, we're already sending the signal out, and the universe will answer. But if we're focused on the results of the thing we're trying to control it, one, and then two, it becomes more of like needing to receive some sort of validation. And like at the other video that I created, I think there's like 7 views, and I'm like, hey, if 7 people watched it, that's amazing. And if it helps somebody, even better. So yeah, there is the ego. I'm learning to let go of the ego's need to feel significant. I mean, at different stages, parts of the ego can die away. And as we elevate our own consciousness, we're able to acknowledge it and ask it to step aside. But yeah, I think we're souls in this human experience, and part of experiencing the human experience is also the ego. And to learn to make friends with it, I think that's a good way of putting it. And to its only role is to keep us safe, and that's really it. So yeah, here's me stepping into fear of the unknown, and I want to thank each of you for whomever sees this, and I hope that this has some positive impact on you. And I'll be sharing more and about lots of different things, not just about the grieving process. I have so much content from all the years that I've been creating things and all the things that I've been making, and there's a whole bunch of new projects that I'm working on. So yeah, thank you for showing up today and sharing some of your precious time with me, and love and blessings to you.